What you're about to hear is a sample from the latest Patreon bonus episode of The War on Cars, in which we talk about some recent research into how our auto-centric transportation system makes us lonely and how cars divide society. It's one of the major themes of our forthcoming book, Life After Cars. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode and get our take on David Byrne's subway take on bicycle etiquette, find us on Patreon at patreon.com/thewaroncarspod. You'll get lots of other great benefits too.
I think it gets at something I talk about a lot, which is that the answer to our problems is not to turn everything into Manhattan or Brownstone, Brooklyn, or downtown San Francisco, or the Loop in Chicago. It looks a little bit more like old-fashioned streetcar suburbs where you have main commercial shopping districts, and just behind that you have apartment buildings, and then behind that you have single-family homes, so that you could walk to the grocery store. It doesn't mean you wouldn't have a car necessarily, but the life satisfaction that they're talking about in this study, where you wouldn't have to use a car for more than 50% of your trips, that becomes a little more possible.
So the study wasn't designed to get at the reasons for people's dissatisfaction with this problem of having to drive everywhere. But the researchers did have some ideas. So, Doug, you want to read this from the Guardian article?
So the lead researcher said the results were surprising and could be the result of a number of negative impacts as driving, such as the stress of continually navigating roads and traffic, the loss of physical activity from not walking anywhere, reduced engagement with other people, and the growing financial burden of owning and maintaining a vehicle. Some people drive a lot and feel fine with it, but others feel a real burden, she said. The study doesn't call for people to completely stop using cars, but the solution could be in finding a balance. For many people, driving isn't a choice, so diversifying choices is important.
Diversifying choices is important.
Well, this study got flagged right away because diversity was in there.
That's right.
That's right.
You could say it to a British publication.
But yes. Yes.
But, you know, so this idea that diversifying choices is important, which I think is one of our main messages here, is like we never say to people, like, we believe that you should just throw away your car and that you should just somehow then be able to get around. Obviously, that's not possible. But imagine that you had a good bike lane infrastructure in your suburb that allowed for, you know, e-cargo bikes to take the kids to sports instead of having to get in the car every time. Imagine, you know, the buses came frequently to take you to school or to the hospital or wherever you have to go. Those things would give you choices. But in our country, despite all the talk of liberty, we're rapidly disinvesting in transit and bike lanes and sidewalks, all the things that would give people choices. It's really, to me, ironic that in a country that holds up the automobile as personal liberty, you know, the way we build things actually takes personal liberty and choice away. And then we gaslight people about that. And we tell them, what's the matter? You've got a car. Like, a car improves your quality of life. Everybody knows that.
You can almost look at this study and the effect forced car dependence has on individual happiness and sort of extrapolate it out to the nation, in that, you know, there probably was a period, I don't want to make it too rosy, but you could probably sort of make a case that, like, there was a use case for cars where you fold them into your life for, like, the drive out to the country, to go do the big grocery shop or whatever it is. But that for the most part, you had your kind of traditional Main Street and your town square and your park and your school. And those things were all in walking distance, and you knew your neighbor. And then you get to, let's say, the 70s, 80s, 90s, where the real post-war suburbs start, you know, sprawl as we understand it today. Shopping centers, lifestyle centers, things like that. And you can see that, like, not only is this bad for individual happiness, but it's just bad for our well-being as a nation. I mean, that's sort of the point we're making in the book too, is that, like, there is a reason a lot of people out there hate their neighbors, because they're just in the way all the time.
Right.
They're just another obstacle to them finding parking, to them getting home from work in the time that they're used to. And this sort of century-long experiment with car development, like, we have reached the more than 50% threshold that these authors are talking about in their study. And it's killing us.
And that actually leads right into the next study that I want to talk about. This actually came out last summer. It's from the Survey Center on American Life. It's part of their 2024 American Social Capital Survey. And the authors, Daniel Cox and Sam Pressler, wrote up the findings in a piece called Disconnected: The Growing Class Divide in American Civic Life. The study gets into how the way we've designed our communities, specifically our increasingly limited access to public spaces like parks and libraries, even commercial spaces like coffee shops, restaurants, diners, how that has eroded our social and civic structure. The authors note a related decline in what they call associational life, which is essentially organized communal life that includes marriage and religious organizations and labor unions, among other things. What they found by looking at the data is that the erosion of these public spaces and of associational life has been profoundly inequitable. And the analysis looks at that inequity as it's measured by the level of educational achievement in communities and also racial disparities. So maybe, Doug, you could read some of this.
I like that we were just joking about how you have the better voice, and now I'm reading all of this stuff. But I will do it. I'll take this one.
Okay.
It's practice for reading the book. Here we go. Americans with a high school education or less are more likely to live in civic deserts lacking commercial places, for example, coffee shops, and public places like community centers, parks, and libraries that are the hubs of community connection. Partly as a result, these Americans are less likely to participate in associational life and more likely to be socially isolated. As Timothy B. Carney writes in Alienated America, Why Some Places Thrive While Others Collapse, associational life has apparently become a high-end good that most people can't access. So then there are some stats. Less than half of Americans report that people in their community can gather in restaurants or diners, 46%, coffee shops or cafes, 41%, gyms or fitness centers, 37%, and local markets or corner stores, 35%.
So already that sounds not great. But what's really not great, and what I think resonates when we look at the political divides that we're seeing in our country, is the way that some of these assets in public life, some of these public goods, the way it breaks down between communities that have majority college-educated population and those that don't, because you see a real difference here.